Hi, so recently I reached out to a few people on Reddit and asked them if they would like to narrate some of my stories and put the narrations on their own YouTube channels, but also on this YouTube channel. So the deal was that they would be allowed to use my stories for their channels and I would be allowed to use their audio for this channel. And I put some of those narrations on this channel already. And I really didn't think anyone else would come back to me, but recently a guy that goes by the name Unknown Reader Sierra, and that's also the name of his YouTube channel, came back to me and said he had narrated one of my stories. And today I'm going to let you listen to that story. Before that, I just want to say a few words about the story. It's called something like, if you ever come across a diary written by Frans Oscar, whatever you do, do not read it. And that story is actually partly inspired by my own diaries. And at first, I actually wrote it as an SCP for the SCP-Foundation, which is a community that write a very specific kind of stories in the form of classified documents, basically. But when I published it on this SCP-Foundation, it was basically downvoted and removed from the site. So I decided to make it a standalone story and published it on NoSleep instead. We received 300 upvotes. So clearly, the SCP-Foundation wasn't really the target group for this story, but NoSleep was much more appreciative of the story. However, it was removed from NoSleep for a few hours because they thought I had stolen the story from myself on the SCP-Foundation. And we did sort it out and they put the story back up, but by then it had already, dropped down in the feed, and it probably lost a lot of upvotes because of that. So I imagine that it would have had a lot more upvotes if it wouldn't have been taken down by mistake. So that was a pretty interesting experience. But you will see when you hear the story that it is a reminiscence of an SCP article, although I have, of course, changed it into something more unique. And I'm also considering using this story in my novel that I'm writing about the lost city that gets transported to another world. And I want to know what you think about that idea. If it would be interesting, or if you think it would just make the story boring, if you think that it will make the book more interesting or less interesting. I would really love to hear your opinions on that. Anyway, so this guy, Unknown Reader Sierra, he produced this narration together with some of his narrator friends, and I will put the links to their channels in a pinned comment so you can check them out as well. In my opinion, it's a very professionally made narration, and I am very grateful for all of the people involved making it. And it really has this theatrical dramatization vibe to it, almost like a radio play rather than just a story being read. So I would be very interested to see what you have to say about it in the comments. Anyway, with no further ado, here is the story in question. If you ever find a diary written by Frans Oscar, whatever you do not read it.
This isn't going to be your typical story, but I hope you will take some time and read it anyway and try to help me figure this out. I'm hiding at a friend's house right now for reasons I will mention later, and I just want this out into the world before it's too late. Yesterday, while I was on my way home from work, I accidentally collided into a man on the street. He frantically ran into me. He seemed to be in a hurry, and he behaved as if he was running away from something. He was wearing a business suit, but it looked like he had rolled around in the dirt. This happened in Stockholm, close to Odenplan. After we collided, he ran off, and I noticed that the man had dropped a USB flash drive on the ground, so I picked it up and looked for him, but he was already gone. The flash drive was yellow, and had some red text on it that said, "Yellow neutral ink, we open doors." I brought the flash drive home with me, and I didn't like the idea of attaching it to my computer, but I thought it could help me figure out who he was so that I could give it back to him. However, The only thing I found on it was a PDF named YN-4511932/DDRX. After reading it, I didn't know what to think. Naturally, as you will find out, I assumed it was made up. But a few hours later, 3 black cars stopped outside my apartment building. 4 Secret Service-looking men, followed by 2 men in yellow hazmat suits. I saw them through my window. I didn't think it had anything to do with me until I saw that company's logo on one of the hazmat suits. I quickly fled my apartment through my backyard. Now I'm fearing for my life. And why? Only because of this strange document.
Case number YN-4511932/DDRX. Authors: Professor Jasmine Hosted, Dr. Benjamin Nordlund. Status: unsolved.
Instructions. Frans Oscar's diaries are to be stored in the library at Sector 49 and can only be read by personnel with special permission from head librarian Dr. Timothy Friedman in Study Room 04. Personnel with an IQ over 120 or above are forbidden to read more than 25% of the diaries and are recommended to only read 10% to minimize the risk for psychological problems. When 25% of the diaries has been read, the studies must be continued by someone else within the assigned research team at the time. After trials with cognitively underdeveloped test subjects, it has been determined that it is safe to read the diaries by anyone with an IQ under 100. Editions of diaries that are found outside containment, for example in electronic form on the internet, or in printed version in secondhand bookstores, are to be destroyed. Continuations of the diaries written by infected subjects, however, are to be brought to Sector 49 for containment. 5 infected subjects are to be kept in separated cells at Sector 49 at all times. All 5 infected are to have access to pen and paper, and everything they write are to be brought to Dr. Friedman. Communication with any of the infected requires permission from Dr. Friedman. If any of the infected dies in containment, they are to be replaced with a new instance. If none have been found on the field within the period of 6 months, a TUS subject with an IQ of 120 or higher is to be forced to read the diaries to completion. This is to be done under observation in Study Room 04. When the test subject has been reclassified as an infected subject by Dr. Friedman, it is to be placed in the same cell as the former infected subject. All infected subjects, except the 5 in containment, are to be sought out and eliminated by company agents.
Description: Frans Oscar's diaries are a mimetic virus. The diaries consist of 10 original volumes, including an introductory prelude, and an unknown amount of volumes written by infected subjects. Each original volume, including the prelude, is approximately 100,000 words long, and exists in printed form and electronic form. The original volumes extend from November 25, 2002 to February 14, 2017, and the prelude covers the time from Frans Oscar's birth to the date he started writing the diary. Frans Oscar was born in Stockholm, Sweden, January 29, 1985, and died by suicide February 14, 2017. Most of what we know about him comes from the diaries, but a lot of it has later been confirmed through interviews with his relatives, documents from Swedish authorities, and traces on the internet. Frans Oscar was a Bachelor of Philosophy, specializing in philosophy of the mind, but ended his life as a cleaner at Hornstall's service house at Södermalm in Stockholm, Sweden. Based on hints at the end of the diaries, it is believed that Frans Oscar gave his diaries their anomalous effects intentionally together with his close friend Dr. Martin Larsson, who worked as a cognitive scientist at the Karolinska Institute in Stockholm, Sweden, until he disappeared without a trace soon after Frans Oscar's suicide. According to the diaries, Frans Oscar wrote a book about the consciousness together with Dr. Larsson titled The Connection Theory of Consciousness. After completing the book, Frans Oscar made one last entry in his diaries in which he wrote he had, quote, finally solved the riddle, end quote. During his entire life, Frans Oscar suffered from an irrational fear of death, while at the same time he hated his own life. It is agreed among yellow neutral researchers that this inner contradiction is what Frans Oscar refers to as the riddle. It is unknown how their theory made it possible to solve this riddle and create the anomalous properties of the diaries. All attempts to find a copy of the connection theory of consciousness have failed so far. However, it does exist as an earlier version of the theory that Frans Oscar wrote as a teenager, referred to in the prelude of his diaries, but yellow neutral researchers still haven't been able to derive an explanation from it. The anomalous effects of the diaries are best described with an explanation of the infected subjects. An infected subject is anyone who has read the diaries. When someone with an IQ of 120 or more reads the diaries cover to cover, a slowly progressing psychological change begins within the mind of the reader that always results in the loss of the reader's original personality in favor of Frans Oscar's personality. The subjects reading the diaries will be completely convinced they are Frans Oscar after having read them to completion. Some evidence suggests this is more than a psychotic delusion, since about 1% of all observed infected subjects seem to be able to refer to events in Frans Oscar's life that are not mentioned in his diaries. However, it is not clear yet if these are genuine memories or qualified guesses based on the contents of the diaries. More research is necessary to determine this. Psychological changes become detectable after 5% of reading the diaries. No matter the initial interest in the diaries, the reader acquires an abnormal interest in them at this point. This leads to an addictive behavior. Subjects often lack insight into these early changes and explain away the symptoms with a normal interest in the story or in the language. At 10%, subjects usually begin exploring Frans Oscar's cultural interest, such as his taste in music and movies. Subjects typically explain away this as a normal curiosity. 20% in, subjects internalize Frans Oscar's different temperaments. Regardless of their initial mood or mental diagnosis, all subjects now adjust to Frans Oscar's psychological constitution, a general equanimity with spontaneous anxiety about death and with a loathing towards his or her own life. Company researchers who have written a log or kept notes will at this point begin to write far more than necessary for their research. At 30%, the writing develops into a mania in all subjects. Anxiety ensues if there's no access to writing tools. At 40%, subjects start to exhibit a strong interest in Frans Oscar's relatives, especially his mother and girlfriend. At first, subjects try to gain information about them on the internet. Then attempts are being made to contact them. If successful, however, subjects get confused since they suddenly realize they have nothing to say to them. After subjects have read 50% of the diaries, they start to confuse their own memories with those in the diaries. During this phase, subjects display confusion and anxiety, but the addiction to the diaries is too strong for them to stop reading it. If subjects are forced to stop reading at this stage in the process, they are left in a permanent psychotic state, which often results in suicide. During the rest of the process, the memories of the subjects continue to be displaced by the original contents of the diaries. This continues until the end, when there is nothing left of the subject's original personality. Subjects are classified as infected at this point. Although infected subjects seem to be a psychological copy of Frans Oscar, no infected subject has shown any signs of fear of death or hatred towards their own life. Instead, infected subjects display euphoria. The only answer yellow neutral researchers have gotten from infected subjects as to why this is the case is that, quote, "the riddle has been solved," end quote. Attempts with torture did not change their attitude. Infected subjects are continuously trying to get other people to read Frans Oscar's diaries, often by starting reading groups or by placing printed copies of it in second-hand bookshops or small libraries. The printed version of the diaries has only been found on 3 occasions since it was first discovered, but the electronic version has appeared once a year, either as a torrent on Pirate Bay or as a free ebook on Amazon. The uploader has of yet not been identified, but is believed to be an infected subject of Dr. Larson. The company is currently trying to understand how the diaries work and prevent it from spreading any further. It is of the utmost importance that Dr. Larson is found and brought to Sector 49 for questioning. Discovery. Frans Oscar's diaries were brought to the company's attention after two people, a teenage girl and an elderly man, were admitted to two different mental hospitals for having the exact same delusions, although they had no prior relations to each other. It turns out that both of the patients had read approximately 70 to 80% of Frans Oscar's diaries.
Update 10/09/17. It seems as if the poems that are scattered throughout the prelude plays a casual role in the onset of the symptoms. When subjects do not read the poems, the progress of the personality changes stops at around 50%. It is still not known which part of the diaries that causes the other 50% of the transformation into Frans Oscar. Also, the word "fblurb" in the poem might be of importance. Before complete transformation into Frans Oscar, hearing the word causes the subject to have a panic attack.
Addendum. Research notes by infected subject 01, formerly known as Dr. Rosilda M. Goldberg.
March 20th, 2018. Frans Oscar is showing signs of depression in combination with his fear of death in Volume 1. May 31st, 2003, he writes, I hate living partly because I'm so afraid of not doing it. At this point, my best hypothesis is that Frans Oscar wrote his diaries to avoid being forgotten, and hence to survive in the minds of his readers. Still unclear how this wish went from being metaphorical to being literal. March 25th, 2018. Frans Oscar shows no sign of wishing to survive through his diaries in a literal meaning at the end of Volume 1. His wish to preserve himself and his memories in the metaphorical sense develops, however. December 19, 2003, he writes about a breakup in the following way. I wrote down what was you and I in the hopes that we would meet again in 1,000 years, that we would once again lie next to each other in the grass that day of spring, when not only the sunbeams touched you, but me as well. Although I never really had you, I have now lost you. My only hope is that the day I had you at my side will return, if only in the minds of whoever reads my diary in our distant future. May 17, 2018. I'm getting more and more convinced that the diaries lack anomalous effects. It seems much more likely that the young woman and the old man got the exact same delusions thanks to Frans Oscar's profound language and impressive ability to convey his inner life in a living and believable, almost enchanting way. I don't think there were any risks connected to reading the diaries. The two patients were simply mentally unstable and pathologically susceptible to captivating text. Similar cases have, after all, been observed in the past. The Bible and the Quran have inspired countless people to commit insane actions. The Catcher in the Rye inspired the murder of John Lennon, and even the Foundation trilogy by Isaac Asimov has been said to have been an inspiration for both Al-Qaeda and the Japanese cult Aum Shinrikyo. I really don't understand why Dr. Friedman insists on classifying Frans Oscar's diaries as anomalous. June 15, 2018. My pollen allergy acted up when I woke up this morning. This summer, however, the allergy had been more lenient than usual. I prepared my breakfast after I stepped out of bed. First, I rinsed my frozen blueberries, then I poured them into a bowl together with sour milk and some homemade muesli. After that, I smeared some butter on 2 slices of dark bread. I've been eating this kind of breakfast for a few days now, inspired by Frans Oscar. I must say, I'm not disappointed. It's healthy and it tastes good. When I'd finished eating, I took care of the dishes and went into the bathroom where I brushed my teeth. I spit the toothpaste in the toilet so I wouldn't have to clean the sink. Next, I took out my lunchbox and sat down for a few minutes in my armchair out in the living room and waited for my ride to work. When I arrived at Sector 49, my keycard malfunctioned. However, the iris scanner still worked, so the guard made an exception and let me in anyway. I wanted to believe it had something to do with my charm, but most likely he was too lazy to call the security office. Anyway, now I'm finally in room 4. I've adjusted all the cameras and can finally get to work and read. I've longed for it all day.
Interviews with infected subject 05, formerly known as test subject 40958. Day 1, 0% of the diaries read.
Please sit down.
What am I doing here? They told me to read a bunch of books and then they drove me. I don't know where, but I must be across the whole fucking country. I mean, sorry if I sound rude. It's just nobody wants to tell me what's going on.
It's alright. You got nothing to worry about. I promise. In fact, you can view this task as a privilege. You see, we measured your IQ, and we were very impressed.
Okay.
Yes, it's far above average.
Am I getting a promotion?
No, not exactly. Or, it depends on how you see it. This sector is, after all, one of the safest within the company. So, coming here could very well be considered a promotion. Now, after your cognitive screening, you were asked to read a couple of books. Can you be so kind as to tell me a little bit about your attitude towards literature?
My attitude? Well, it's good, I guess.
Please, it's important that you are completely honest, or this won't work. What do you feel about reading books?
Well, personally, I don't fancy it. I mean, I just don't get it. Why read when you can watch a movie or play a video game where you actually see what's going on?
Thank you. You are doing great.
Okay.
And after reading these books, Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, 1984 by George Orwell, Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky, Beyond Good and Evil by Friedrich Nietzsche, and Twilight by Stephanie Meyer. Those were the books, correct?
Yeah. I mean, yes, I read all those.
And your attitude towards reading didn't change?
To the contrary. Honestly, I didn't understand the Nietzsche guy at all, and I literally wanted to pour bleach in my eyes after reading that Twilight bullshit.
Yes, I'm sorry about that last one.
So, what am I doing here, Doc?
I want you to read a couple of more books.
Oh.
It's a series of diaries. There's nothing special about them. Certainly nothing anomalous about them. This is just further testing of your cognitive abilities. And if you follow through completely, you will, of course, be rewarded. Perhaps I can arrange so you can get that Game Boy you have been requesting for so long.
You mean the Nintendo Switch?
Yes, that one.
Day 10, 3% of the diaries read.
So, how do you feel?
I feel great, Doc. The food is really good here. Much better than that at Sector 58.
What do you think about the diaries so far?
Well, they are pretty interesting, I guess.
Do you feel that your attitude towards literature has changed in any way since our talk a few days ago?
No, not really. I'm still bored to death in that room when I'm just reading all day. But if I can stay at that sector, I'm willing to do it.
What's so interesting about the diaries?
I don't know, really. I guess it's just interesting to see the world from a different perspective, you know? And this Frans guy, it's something about him that I just get. I'm nothing like him or anything. He's a freaking nerd, but it still feels like I can relate to him somehow.
I see. Let's see. I have some questions I would like to ask you. For instance, where did you grow up?
Where I grew up? Well, I grew up at foster care I'd stay there until I was 15, I think. A few of my mates at Sector 58 grew up there as well, you know.
And after that?
I got transported to basic training we lived in the barracks there. Nothing much happened there, really, and eventually I got moved into Sector 58.
I see. And friends, do you have any?
Sure, I've got friends. There's this guy that lives in the room next to me, for example.
Tell me about him.
Actually, he's a real funny guy. Once at work, we were sent into and he took and put it on his head. Man, he was disciplined for that, but it was totally worth it.
Good. It's okay to have some fun at work.
Really? Man, you're really not like the other doctors. You're alright.
Thanks. Now, tell me, do you remember anything about your parents?
Nah, Doc, I've never even met them. Was told they died in a car accident.
Day 20. 5% of the diaries read.
How are you feeling today?
Doc, my man, I gotta say these books are getting really interesting.
I'm glad to hear it. Would you mind answering a few questions?
Is it gonna take long? Because I would really like to get back to the books.
I thought you didn't like sitting in that room. In fact, I remember that you told me it bored you to death.
Doc, listen, I just really appreciate the language in the story. I want to know what's gonna happen next, you know?
Tell me about your friend that you told me about before.
Who? Oh, that funny guy? Yeah, he's my pal. We do some crazy shit sometimes when we're at work. Anyway, is that it? Can I go back to my room now?
What would you say if you're not allowed to go back to the room?
No, Doc, where's all this coming from all of a sudden? I've done everything you've asked of me. Or, I was joking. You weren't serious, were you?
I think you should take a break from the books.
No. Please don't do this to me, man. Can I at least finish this volume first?
I will let you continue to read on one condition.
Yeah, just name it. Whatever.
You can continue to read if and only if you never get the Nintendo Switch.
The Nintendo Switch? Yeah, who cares, man? It's a deal.
Fascinating. You may return to room 04 and resume reading.
Day 50. 30% of the diaries read.
Are you alright today?
Yes, I've just finished one of the volumes. I can't wait to begin the next one.
Last night, you went to the library. Is that correct?
Yeah, wasn't I allowed? They told me I had access.
No, it's alright. But I'm curious, what did you do there?
I was just looking up some books I thought would be interesting to read.
Which books?
Well, there's this book that Frans Oscar is reading, The Gadfly, and so I thought I would check it out.
Where do you think this sudden interest in literature comes from?
It feels like I've always had it, you know? I just hadn't really given it a chance before. Frans Oscar's diaries have opened my eyes to it, that's all. I mean, I'm glad I've finally discovered literature.
Have the diaries inspired you to do something?
Sure, man. For example, I would love to visit Sweden, especially Stockholm. You know, Frans is describing the streets so beautifully. I hope I would be sent to do some work there someday.
Perhaps you could bring your friend with you.
My friend?
The funny guy.
Oh, yeah, the funny guy. Yeah, I guess. I don't think he likes any of this stuff, though. But perhaps if I let him read the books, then he would surely understand.
What do you remember about your parents?
They're dead. Was told they died in a car accident. Never even met them.
How old are you, by the way?
45, Doc, but you know that.
That will be all for today. You're doing great. See you in a few days.
Day 40. 20% of the diaries read.
How are you feeling today?
You know, Doc, to be honest, I've been feeling a bit off lately.
Don't you like the books anymore?
Oh no, it's not that. Please don't think that. It's just, in general, I've been feeling, I don't know, different, I guess. I've been thinking about the stuff me and my buddy used to do at work. You know, these crazy things. How could I have been that fucking stupid? I could have gotten myself killed. I don't know what I was thinking back then. I mean, I feel pathetic, you know? And it's not just because of all the mistakes I've done. It's also because I don't seem to have a future. I'm stuck in this small space between the past, the future, and I just can't get out.
Are these feelings making you act differently?
No, not really, but I'm calmer now than what I was before. I don't get upset anymore, but I don't get excited either. It's just neutral. And if we're being totally open with each other, you know, I've stopped jerking off as often as I used to. What's happened to me, Doc? Should I be worried?
No need to worry. You're probably just adjusting to the environment here at Sector 49.
Oh, okay. By the way, can I ask you something, Doc?
Anytime.
Would it be possible for me to request something?
The Nintendo Switch?
What? No, I just want a notebook and a pencil. That's all. I think that would make me very happy.
I will see what I can do.
Thank you.
Day 50. 30% of the diaries read.
Do you enjoy the notebook I gave you?
Are you kidding? It's great. But I've almost finished it. I'm writing a lot every day.
What do you write about?
Well, my day-to-day routines. What I'm thinking about and what I'm feeling. You know, it's been really therapeutic.
Just like Frans Oscar.
Yes, I must say, those books have changed my life for the better in many ways. I've discovered so many new interesting things.
I'm sure you have. Would you like to receive another notebook?
Yes, of course.
Very well. I will see to it that one is given to you. I think we are done here for today.
Day 70. 50% of the diaries read.
How are you today?
I don't know, Doc. I'm having these flashbacks, you know?
Flashbacks? Could you describe them in more detail?
Well, you'll probably think I'm silly, but I remember the things that Frans wrote in his diaries. It's like I was there. Am I going crazy, Doc? I've been so confused lately. Yesterday, I was thinking how much fun it would be playing StarCraft with my old friend Rasmus when I was a kid, and then it suddenly dawned on me. Rasmus was Frans' childhood friend. I've never had any childhood friends.
It seems the diaries are having a negative effect on you. Are you sure you want to continue reading them?
Yeah, obviously. I need to know how they end now. I can't stop now. No, but I don't know. I miss my mother. His mother. Damn it. What's happening to me? I don't want to die. I don't want to die. I don't want to die.
Calm down. You are safe here.
Safe? I'm not even allowed to talk to my girlfriend. His girlfriend. Fuck!
Easy now. Concentrate. What happened to your parents? Focus on your memories.
I don't know. Oh my god, I don't fucking know. My parents. I grew up but I'm pretty sure my mother was an artist who lived. Fuck, no, that wasn't my mother. That's crazy. But she keeps popping up in my head. Fuck!
40958 breaks down and turns the table over. Guards lead him back to room 04. Day 140. 100% of the diaries read.
What's your name?
Frans Oscar.
Age?
If that calendar on the wall is anything to go by, I'm 33.
I see. Do you have any recollection of how you ended up here?
I'm not exactly sure. You seem to be a doctor.
And you seem to be happy. What are you so happy about?
I have already won. You may do whatever you like to me. It's all gone forever now.
What is gone?
The fear, the anxiety. I've finally reached the end of my death.
The end of your death? Can you describe that in more detail?
Call it whatever you want. Nirvana, Atrexia, heaven.
How did you accomplish this? Please, as a researcher, I only want to know how all of this works. If you tell me, I can make sure that you are allowed to live out the remainder of your life happily.
Doctor, the truth is my diaries. Why don't you read them?
You know why. Where's Dr. Larson?
Infected subject 05 stares at Dr. Friedman without responding.
Fine. Let's discuss some philosophy instead, okay?
If you wish.
Isn't your consciousness unique to your brain? Aren't you just a copy of Frans Oscar, rather than a continuation of his actual consciousness?
That would only make sense if consciousness is a property of the brain.
Isn't that what neuroscience teaches us?
Is it though? If you observe a radio without any knowledge of radio waves, you might be inclined to believe that the radio station is realized inside of the radio. Now, without any knowledge of consciousness, which neuroscientist doesn't have, of course, you will naturally assume that our mental state originates from within the only thing you can observe, the brain. It's an understandable mistake. Logically, it doesn't work. However, hence the hard problem of consciousness.
But your theory solves that. The connection theory of consciousness.
It does. But this is just a tiny fraction of what made my diaries, what made me possible. Don't think for a second that I've told you too much.
Is this a supernatural phenomenon?
Nothing goes beyond nature, Doctor. But nature goes beyond human knowledge.
What do you want?
To exist.
But what about the people whose life you take?
There are too many things you don't understand to even begin to comprehend my reasoning.
You don't find what you are doing immoral?
Well, Doctor, the more you know about the universe, the more your idea of right and wrong changes. You should know this. Just take a look at your own company. All the lies it has taken. Without the knowledge you possess, your actions would look rather evil, wouldn't they?
The company is protecting civilization, serving the greater good.
Well, there you go.
If you are trying to protect civilization somehow, then maybe we should work together.
Doctor, I'm afraid that won't be possible.
Why is that?
I'm protecting civilization from you.
From us? But with our discovery of... We have given humanity its only chance of long-term survival.
The infinite resources in the infinite. You don't appreciate its true value, and you don't comprehend the endless, everlasting darkness out there, and how much it wants it. You don't even know where it comes from. You're so arrogant, yet so ignorant.
And you claim to know about these things.
Infected subject 05 refuses to answer to the statement.
Let's change the topic for a while. What is the meaning of Flablurg?
Believe me, you don't want to know. This discussion is pointless.
Another question. Do you experience the others, the other instances of you, simultaneous as your own experiences?
Infected subject 05 refuses to answer any more questions. The interview is stopped. Selection of poems. Caution. A small percent experience mild psychosis after reading these poems. Read at your own risk.
Poem 1.
I stood in the hall of the dead, trying to find a way to escape, the same time lying in my bed, cursing being this pathetic ape. I spent years inside my own mind, until I came across a fallen tower, where only one thing was left behind, the Chronicle of Furberg, filled with power. As I read it within my dreams, I saw the end of everything frail, a dead philosophy taken to its extremes. For a mortal, it was the Holy Grail.
Poem 2.
Listen to the echo, drip, 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 to the harsh winds inside this realm thrown against the hull of a sunken ship, inside which I soon took the helm. I steered the ship through the sand, effortlessly crossing its pale, forgotten dunes, to escape my prison in this disgusting land, hearing the horror in Flurberg's enchanted tunes. I saw the heavens open up ahead, filled with millions of strange vibrating stars, the sight of which my eyes bled, and through the blood, I somehow saw Mars.
Poem 3.
At last, I regained my troubled consciousness. I finally woke up, sweating in my bed, feeling the presence of my new fearlessness. If I wrote, I would never be dead. I took my pen with this new great sensation, and I sat down at my desk to write and escape my own damnation. And I didn't stop, although it was grotesque. To my joy, I would never be forgotten, for I had saved my miserable self. And although the world was rotten, my bitter life was on everyone's shelf. Something is weird. I can't stop crying. After reading those poems, something entered my soul. It's impossible to describe. Something is wrong. It's as if something is breathing into my ear backwards. Oh my God, what is happening to me?